Hey, welcome to Unit 1, Day 2, Algebra 2. Okay, let's get right into those notes. We're going to start by looking at the parent function for all linear functions. Right? The parent function for all linear graphs is just y equals x. Okay? The domain of the parent function, the x-coordinates, can be any real number. It could be anything from -infinity to infinity. So x could be -3 trillion. X could be +5,000,000.723. Okay, anything. The range, the y-coordinates, okay? The y-coordinates also could be any real number. Okay, so for domain, it goes left forever and right forever, and there are no holes in between. That's why it's all reals. For range, it goes down forever, it goes up forever, and there's no holes or gaps in between. Right? So that's just some information about your linear function, the parent y equals x. Now, what does it look like? Well, y equals x, because y and x are the same. Okay? Let's do the table first. Okay? Whatever x is, y is equal to it. So we know that if x is 0, y is 0, which means that the line goes through the origin. Okay? If x is 3, y is 3. If x is -3, y is -3. Okay? And you could go 5, 5, go -5, -5, okay? And you would still be on the same line. Connect your dots. Put arrows on both sides, saying that we go left and right infinitely. Okay, so as we said, it goes up forever, it goes down forever. It goes right forever, it goes left forever. So that's why we have the domain and the range is all real numbers. This is your parent function, your graph, y equals x. Okay. And now it says, what patterns do you observe in the table and the graph? The pattern that we notice from the table is that the x always equals the y. It's that simple. Now, what about from the graph? Well, if you notice, the graph passes through the origin. And if you think about y equals mx plus b, well, just remember, passing through the origin, that's the y-intercept. So the b is 0. And then if we looked at the m part of the slope-intercept equation, okay, look at this graph. This graph, every time we rise 1 unit, we go to the right 1 unit. Rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run 1. So your slope, or your m, is 1. Okay, so our slope equals 1, and your y-intercept is 0 for the parent function. Okay, let's scoot down the page just a little bit. So for this little section here, if you look at your graph, the graph has 3 lines plotted here. The line in the middle, the one that's colored black, that's your parent graph. That's y equals x. And then they have line A in red, and then they have line B in green. Okay, so let's look at the relationship or the changes that would occur if we start with the parent function, the black line, and we go to the red line, A. Well, do they have the same or different y-intercepts? Okay? Well, they both pass through the origin. So they have the same y-intercept, which means that the b is still 0. Okay? So there are no changes as far as where the line crosses the y-axis. B is still 0. However, the red line, you can see, definitely is steeper than the black line. Okay? The red line is steeper. So A, capital A, which is line A, is steeper. Okay? So what did they have in common? The parent function and line A both cross the y-axis at 0. What do they not have in common? The slopes are not the same. The black line has a slope of 1, as we said previously. If we look at 2 points, let's go with the origin, which red is passing through, we said. And then let's see, how about the point 1, 3? Okay, so if you look at the point 1, 3, okay, you start at the origin, you can rise 3 and run 1. You could do it again, rise 3, run 1, rise 3, run 1. So the slope is 3/1 for line A, right? So what we can write here is, we can say the slope is 3/1, which tells me that the equation for line A would be y equals mx plus b. The m is 3/1. I'm just going to write 3. And it is positive. It's rising. Okay, remember last notes, the puff, puff positive with the slope dude. Okay, so 3x. Okay, and now you could say plus 0 if you wanted to, and it's not technically incorrect, but we don't need a plus 0 because adding 0 doesn't change anything. So the equation of line A, we could say, is y equals 3x. Okay, now look at line B. Line B, as far as the y-intercept, the little b is still 0. Okay, like line A and the parent graph, y-intercept goes through the origin. Okay, but once again, we have a slope that's different than the parent graph. The green line is less steep than the black line. Okay, so it has less steepness. So let's see what we could rise and run on this one. So I see the point 3, 1 is on this line. So if we rise and run, we rise 1, run 3, and we keep going. Rise 1, run 3, rise 1, run 3. Okay, 1/3 is going to be our slope. Okay, so we would say that B is less steep, which means it's closer to horizontal. Okay? Remember horizontal, hoi box, horizontal lines have a slope of 0. So the slope is closer to 0 than the parent graph, which had a slope of 1. Okay, and closer to 0 than 1, yeah, 1/3 is closer to 0 than 1. We found that the slope was 1/3. It's rising to the right, so it's positive, and it's rising 1, running 3. So the equation of line B would give us y equals 1/3 x. And again, you could say plus 0, but we're going to leave the plus 0 off. All right, so the second graph, the second set of lines, right? Once again, we have the parent graph in black, y equals x. Y equals 1x plus 0. The m is 1, the b is 0. Compare it to A. A is parallel to the parent graph. Line A and the parent graph are parallel. Now, what do we know parallel means? Parallel just means same slope. same slope. All right, so the m is going to be the same. But what is the b? Well, the y-intercept, which is the b, it moved up from the parent graph. If you start with the parent graph, you moved up how many units? 6. Okay, you moved up 6 units. So it's a positive 6. I'll put a little plus 6 there. So that tells me that I can find the graph, excuse me, the equation of this line A as y equals, now again, it's mx plus b. Right? M is the slope. It's parallel or the same slope as 1x plus 0, the parent graph. So it's going to be 1x, but just like we didn't add 0 before, I'm not going to be worried about the 1. I'm just going to call it y equals x. And then b, your y-intercept is positive 6. So y equals x plus 6 is going to be my equation for line A. Okay? It has a slope of 1, a y-intercept of positive 6. Okay? Now let's look quickly at the green. The green line, B, is also parallel to the black line, the parent function y equals x. So because it's parallel, we know that that equation is also going to have 1 as my m for my slope. Okay? Now, this y-intercept is lower than the parent graph's y-intercept of 0. Okay? Where does the green line intercept the y-axis? Well, it's at negative 6. So we have it there. The y-intercept is at negative 6. Awesome. Right. It's pretty easy to write our equation. Y equals, again, the slope is 1. Rise 1, run 1, rise 1, run 1. Okay. Over and over again. 1x. In this case, we go down 6 for the b. Okay. So far, so good. We look at our next graph, and this time, all we have is the parent function, and then we have line A. Okay, well, what do they have in common? Well, their y-intercept is still the origin. So it's at 0, 0. Okay, so the y-intercept is at 0 because it crosses the origin. But what about the slope? Well, the parent function rises 1, runs 1. Rises 1, runs 1. So the slope is 1. We know that because it's y equals 1x plus 0. Well, the red slope, it also rises 1, runs 1. Rises 1, runs 1. The only difference is that it rises and runs such that from left to right, it's falling. So we have a negative slope. Right? It's still 1 over 1, but the direction is different. So it's a negative 1 over 1. Okay, so the slope is negative. Okay, so it's negative 1 over 1. So therefore, my equation is y equals, we could have negative 1x if we wanted to write that. And I won't call it incorrect if you write negative 1x. But again, you don't need a 1 in front of the x. It's that good old invisible math. Okay? And the y-intercept is 0. But once again, we don't need to write plus 0 because adding 0 does not change quantity whatsoever. Okay, so y equals negative x is the equation of this line A. Okay, y equals negative x. Conclusions. Yes, m is your slope. M can be found by rise over run. Okay, you can go rise over run. Okay? And we do know that direction, okay, rising to the right is positive slope, falling to the right is a negative slope. Horizontal is a zero slope, and a vertical line has an undefined slope. Okay? So yes, M is the slope. You can find it by rise over run. B is the y-intercept. Okay? And you should know that the y-intercept is simply the location where the graph intersects the y-axis. Right? So the B, you know, if it is above the origin, it's positive. If it's below the origin, it's negative. Okay, so yes, M is your slope, B is your y-intercept, and we've done 3 of those graphs so far to look at those. Okay, let's move on. Now, let's take a look at these 2 questions here. These questions seem to be worded in such a way that students have had a lot of difficulty with just deciphering what it's asking in ALEX over the years. So let's walk through these, and obviously if you have a question you can ask, but I think if you take your time and organize it like we're going to organize it, you're going to be in good shape. Okay, so let's read question A. It says, compared to the graph of y equals x, the graph of y equals negative 2x is blank. All right, so first thing I want you to do is to look at the choices. Steeper, equally steep, less steep. And I want you to ask yourself, are they asking about slope? Or are they asking about y-intercept? Okay. Once you determine that, half of your work is done. Okay. So slope is talking about steepness or incline or decline. So if it's saying steeper or equally steep or less steep, that's slope. Okay, that is slope. So all I need to know is what is the slope of the 2 lines that we're discussing in the question. So slope is the M, and mx plus b. M is the coefficient, which just means the number in front of the letter, the coefficient of x. So what number is in front of x? Well, if they don't write 1, invisible math tells me it's 1x. For the second line that it mentions, the coefficient of x, the m, is negative 2. Okay. That's the work. Now let's just answer the question. So the question says, compared to the parent graph where the slope is 1, the graph of this second line, which the slope is negative 2, must be steeper, equally steep, or less steep. Okay? Here is a very important teaching point. Okay? Closer to 0 okay, we know this from the first day's note. Closer to 0, 0 slope is horizontal. So closer to 0 is less steep. Okay, so the closer to 0 my slope is, the closer to horizontal I'm getting, and horizontal is as not steep as you can get. Conversely, if it's further from 0, it's steeper, okay? If your slope is further from 0, it could be positive or negative. If it's further from 0, you're gonna be steeper. Let's write that, I guess, here, just. Okay, slope is further from 0, your line or your graph is going to be steeper. All right, So is -2 closer to 0, further away from 0, or equally far from 0 as compared to the slope of 1? Well, -2 is further from 0 than 1. So further from 0 means steeper, which tells me that my answer is A. So steeper. Forgive the penmanship. If I were an English teacher, I would be embarrassed. All right. Part 2 of question A. Compared to the graph, again, of y equals x, which is our parent function. So compared to this one, the graph of y equals -2x intersects the y-axis at either a higher point, a lower point, or the same point. Okay, so remember, first thing you ask yourself, am I talking about slope or y-intercept? Well, if I push the y-intercept up, I'm going to raise my line up to higher points. If I push my y-intercept down, I'm going to be using lower points. Okay, and then if my y-intercept is the same, then it's going to stay with the same point. Okay, so we are looking at y-intercepts. Okay, so first thing is I'm looking for y-intercept. Y-intercept is B. What is the B of y equals x? Okay, now this is another area where students in the past have had some problems. Y equals x is very similar to just writing y equals 1x plus 0. So my B, my y-intercept, is 0. Y equals -2x, I can rewrite that one as y equals -2x plus 0. So if I say, what are the y-intercepts? Well, for the first line, it's 0. For the second line, it's still 0. So that tells me that those two lines, y equals x and -2x, intersect the y-axis at the same point, at 0, 0. So the same point, which is B. The same point. I'm just going to write PT. Okay? All right. Let's look now at question B. Clean this up just a bit. All right, so question B. Again, first thing, are they asking me about slope or about y-intercept? Are they asking me about the M or the B? Well, they're saying steeper and equally steep and less steep, so I want to know about my slope. Okay, so for y equals x, we know that the slope is 1. Y equals x plus 4. What is the slope? Hopefully you know it's still 1x plus 4, so the slope is 1. So since the slope is 1 for both, we know that they are parallel, also known as equally steep. Okay. Now look at this last question down here. They're asking higher, same, or lower point for the y-intercept. Okay, so we're looking for the B. We're looking for the y-intercept. Right? So the y-intercept for y equals x, if you remember back here, we figured out that it's x plus 0, so the B was 0. What about for x plus 4? Well, the B is positive 4. Okay, you don't have to write plus for the plus 4, but I just put it there because I want to drive home that this is a positive B. It's above the origin. So because it is above the origin, we can easily look at that and say y equals x plus 4 intersects the y-axis at a higher point. okay? Higher. So let's move along again. All right, we're going to finish up with some nice substitution and solving, a little algebra 1-ish type of solving, which is kind of cool. I always love to do some 1 or 2 step algebra solving questions. Okay, let's read this example first. An amusement park charges an admission fee of $30 per person. The cost C in dollars of admission for a group of P people is given by the following function. So they gave you the function. Okay? They've given you the function. That's cool. Now, the only thing you have to look at here is, what do the letters, what do the variables represent? Well, it tells you that P is how many people. Okay, so let's remember that. And then let's also remember that C is the cost. So the C of P is here. That's the cost. So the cost, depending on how many people, is equal to $30 times the number of people. Like if you had 2 people, $30 times 2 people, it costs $60. Let's look at what the question's asking, and that should make it pretty clear on how we're going to do this. It says, what is the cost? So they don't know the cost for admitting a group of 5 people. So they do know how many people there are, but they don't know the cost. All right, well, they know P, they don't know C. Okay, let's keep it real simple. They know the value of P, they don't know the value of C. So when we write out our little algebra equation, the C of P, the cost, can be substituted by we're just going to keep it with C. If you want to write C of P, you can, but it's not necessary. Okay? Why did I keep it there? Because I don't know what the cost is. I'm going to keep it a variable. Now it says it equals 30 times P. So 30 is going to be 30. Should be a given. And then P, it tells you what P is. It says P is 5 people. All right? Easy peasy. So C equals 30 times 5. You all know that anything that's on one side of the equal sign, you simplify it as much as possible. 30 times 5 is 150. And then the last thing that you always want to remember, especially when taking tests, is your labels. Okay? The label here, it says the cost C has a label of dollars. Right? So make sure that you have your label of dollars. So you've answered the top example. Right? Let's answer the next example. All right, Diane wants to save $700 to buy a TV. She'd probably just wait till Black Friday and maybe go online and get Best Buy or Walmart, because you can get a heck of a TV for $700. At least I think so. All right, she saves $18 each week. $18 each week. The amount A in dollars that she still needs after W weeks is given by the following function. Okay? So they gave you the function again. And all you really need to know is, what do those letters, what do those variables stand for? Well, it tells you. A of W, or just A, stands for how many dollars that she needs for the TV. Okay? And then the W is the number of weeks that go by. Okay, so let's answer these 2 questions, and we'll finish up strong. How much money does Diane need after 5 weeks? So she's paying $18 a week, if you could think of what's going on. Okay, you owe somebody $700, you give them $18 a week. Okay, by the way, you're giving them $18 a week, so that means the amount you owe them goes down. That's why there's a negative slope, because the amount of money that she owes is decreasing. All right, so with that aside, how much money? 5 weeks. Okay. You've got A, you've got W. Which one do you know? Well, they gave me 5 weeks, so that means my W is 5. I'm going to substitute 5 for W. So instead of 18W, it's going to be 18 times 5. So I don't know the A. So A of W, I don't know. Okay. Well, you could write it. You could write it as A of 5. Okay. I just don't want you to think that's A times 5. Okay. When we say C of P, when we say A of W, this is not A times W or C times P. This is simply a nice, easy way of writing the function's name. Okay, the function's name is A. So it's A of 5. Okay, for the equation, we'll just say A. So A equals 700 minus 18W. Well, W is 5 weeks. Okay, so there's your setup. Everything on the right side of the equation, simplify it. PEMDAS or GEMS, however you were taught it. You're going to take multiplication, 18 times 5 is 90. 700 minus 90 is 610. Okay. Last thing you need, the label. A is in dollars. So we're going to make sure that we put a dollar symbol. Cool beans. All right. So she started by owing $700. And this is a nice thing to do. When you write down an answer to a word problem or any problem, think about how reasonable your answer is. All right. She started out owing $700. 5 weeks later, she now owes $610. Reasonable. Now, if you had done something wrong and you said, okay, she started owing 700, I got 872. You go, wait a minute. Okay, that's not reasonable because obviously as she pays more and more, the amount she owes should decrease. Okay, so let's finish up with this last question. This last question off of the same information. All right, so let's scoot this up just a bit. All right, so B is asking if she needs $394 still, how many weeks? Okay, so we're looking at our equation again. So we have A of W, or just A for our solving purposes, equals 700 minus 18W. Right? Now, what did they give us? Well, the number they gave us is 394, and it's in dollars. So in dollars, well, that was A. They gave us A this time. So A is now 394. So we substitute 394 for A, and 700 and minus 18 are the same. Okay. Now it says how many weeks? I don't know, so it's still W. Okay, here comes the Algebra 1. Ah, yeah, loving it. So can I simplify what's on the right side of the equal sign? No, 18 times W is 18W. That's as simple as you're going to get. 700 minus 18W, I can't combine those terms by subtraction because they're not like terms. One has a variable W, one doesn't. So that means the right side is simplified, the left side is simplified. So now, because I can't combine, I got to cancel. Okay, so I'm going to choose to subtract 700 from both sides of the equal sign. Right? I'm going to move it up here. Okay, so 394 minus 700 is going to give me a negative number, and that's okay. Negatives are fine. Okay, so negative, what is it, 306? I hope. Equals, and then 700 minus 700 is 0. So what did I not cancel? I did not cancel the minus 18W. So make sure that you have your negative. So minus 18W. Okay. Your last step is to cancel the negative 18. That's multiplication. Please don't do this. Don't add. Adding does not cancel the multiplication of the negative 18 times the W. We're going to divide by negative 18. Divide by negative 18. Dividing gives me just W. Dividing on this other side, negative divided by negative is positive, which is pretty cool. And let's see, 18 goes into 30 once, and then 18 into 126 is 7 times. Yep, it is. So W equals 17. Again, what's my label? Well, it tells me in the original question, W is weeks. So 17 weeks. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, you can shoot me a message on Google Classroom. You can email. You can set up time and flex if you want to do that. Just have to touch base with me. But day 2 down. Take care. Keep it up. See ya.